Hey, welcome back to the Too Fast channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about air intake modifications for the EOS VR6. This would be applicable to most any Volkswagens that have a VR6, including the R32. This particular engine layout is virtually identical to the R32. It's the same motor, same air intake system, and so on. So this stock air intake is, what I would consider a quasi-cold air intake. And I'll talk about that. A quasi-cold air intake, a cold air intake, and a hot air intake. And if we want to get, really into it, we can talk about ram air scoops and so on. Most manufacturers do not design their air intake systems for maximum performance. They design them for daily use, driving in the rain, driving in the snow. They have emissions to be concerned about. They have a lot of other factors to be concerned about. And a lot of times, if a manufacturer has several different models, higher end models, Mercedes is typical for this, they'll detune the lower end cars. You'll see the 5-liter motor in the high end car and a 4.2 liter in the lower end car. So one of the things manufacturers also do is they build in restrictions on the air intake system. So if you're looking to gain some performance, and now I'm speaking specifically for like normally aspirated motors, you can gain a bit from a cold air intake system on your car by increasing the airflow through the mass airflow sensor. The ECU will adjust the fuel trims to keep a balanced air fuel mixture in the car. Now that only works so far, but you can gain a bit of performance, and I've personally gained anywhere from 4 horsepower, rear wheel horsepower, up to 17 rear wheel horsepower. Depends on the vehicle, the motor, the air intake that you're modifying, whether you're going with a complete cold air system or if you're modifying a existing stock system, and so on. So what I've elected to do on this EOS, this is a pretty good setup for the air intake system. Now the air intake actually comes in right down here. It's a little bit out of frame. Let's see. You can't really see that with the way the camera's. Let's move it. There we go. So on the EOS, air is ingested through this vent and then through the grill right here. So that air flows into this assembly, flows down into this air box, up through the filter, through the mass airflow sensor, and through this inlet tube into the throttle body. Now I call this a quasi cold air intake system because on the surface this looks like, well, it's a complete enclosed system. It's a cold air intake, but it actually isn't. Let's see if we can get the camera here. If we take this part of this top off of this air inlet right here, you can't see this too well, but you can see that there is some aluminum. This is high temp aluminum dryer duct tape. It's used for connecting aluminum dryer duct together. So it has a very good adhesive. It's an aluminum type of tape, and it's very durable, heat resistant, and so on. So you're going to see that a little bit in what I've done here. This air intake system, as it comes in through the grill, there's an opening right here that goes right into the engine bay. So when your motor is running, it's sucking in hot air from this part of the inlet as well as cold air. So you're getting a mixture of hot and cold air. This is most likely done for emissions purposes. It's definitely not done for performance. We'll talk about this while this is still kind of in place right here. This is a silicone inlet tube from the mass airflow sensor to the throttle body. This is made by ECS Tuning. It is a larger air inlet. This is the stock air inlet right here. So what this allows is more air to flow out of the mass airflow sensor into the throttle body. I don't have a lot of experience with this particular item on this motor, but owners of R32s have done some testing with the stock inlet compared to the ECS, or a similar one. Doesn't necessarily need to be ECS, but a similar larger one. They've reported 2 to 3 wheel horsepower. So that's not a lot for the money, but you know, every little bit counts. So that's what I have on here as well. This is just kind of set on here because we're going to be taking off the top of the airbox and moving it out of the way. This has already been removed, and we'll just kind of move this out of the way. So one of the other things I've decided to do on the stock air intake system is to replace the panel filter with a high flow panel filter. This happens to be a K&N panel filter specific for the VR6, EOS and R32 and so on. This is probably one of the highest flowing panel filters. Now I haven't tested all the panel filters, but I've looked at flow rates for different panel filters, and this happens to be the highest flowing one that I had data for. Now you have two types of panel filters you can buy that are out in the world now. You've got these gauze type ribbed filters that take an oil, and then you've got what's referred to as a dry filter. Like Piper Cross makes a dry filter. I think AEM makes one, maybe AFE makes one. Those don't require oil. So those are very similar to your stock paper air filter, but they flow better. The dry performance filters do not flow anywhere close to the amount of air that a K&N does. Whether it's a K&N or an AFE or one of the other manufacturers that has a oil impregnated filter. And we'll touch on the oiled filters since we're discussing it right now. I've used, whether it's a K&N cone filter in a cold air intake or a K&N panel filter, I've used these for over 20 years in a lot of different cars. I have never had a mass airflow sensor fail due to oil buildup from a filter. Never. If you clean and oil these correctly, you should not either. I know some people out on the internet in different forums have reported problems, but you know, out of the box, you're not going to see that. Those would have to be extreme cases where somebody poured a bottle of oil on the top of a filter and then put the airbox back together. Because when you go to oil this, you oil it on the bottom. You don't oil it on the top. The oil's on the bottom. And you lightly oil the air filter. You don't drench it in oil. So, you know, again, I've run numerous K&N oiled filters in a lot of different cars over the past 20 years, and I've never had an issue. And one of the things I do is when, you know, at 10 to 15,000 miles, when I go to take the filter out and clean it, I will always check the air inlet tube leading up to the mass airflow sensor, and I'll remove the mass airflow sensor and inspect that for any type of oil residue. I've never found any oil residue in those areas on any car, and that's Mercedes mostly, BMWs, RX-7s, Porsches, cars that I've owned in the past. So anyway, so let's move on past that. This K&N panel filter here runs you, will run you about $50, $60. And a panel filter like this, with some other similar mods, what you're seeing here, Horsepower wise, you could probably expect to see on the dyno a 5 to 10 wheel horsepower increase. And that's going to vary depending upon a lot of different conditions. I know, for example, if we use my Mercedes-Benz 500e, I put 2 K&N panel filters in it, dynoed it before and after, I saw a 4 horsepower increase. Those cars are not known for getting extra horsepower out of. But on the flip side, with a different air intake tube and a K&N filter on a C5 Corvette, I saw a 17 wheel horsepower increase. So, you know, it's going to depend upon the car, the filter, and any type of other restrictions you might have in the air intake system. So, if you look at a cost-benefit analysis of this type of panel filter, let's say it's roughly $50 for a 5 to 10 horsepower increase, that's a good cost benefit right there. Now, you could opt for an aftermarket solution. I know AFE makes a air intake system that replaces the whole top, and you have a cone filter in here, and this gets replaced. Those are really nice. I mean, that's a cold air intake. I mean, it's completely sealed off from the engine bay. APR makes something similar too. I don't think they have one for a VR6, but they've got them for the TSI motors that's completely closed off as well. Those are nice setups, and they probably provide a bit more horsepower than this setup. Not a lot, but a bit more. But here's your cost-benefit analysis on that. Those are roughly $400. This cost me $50. If you include the silicone inlet tube, you know, I'm at $90. So I'm under $100 for my mods. And I'm at 90 to 95% of the horsepower increase. So, you know, if you want to spend the extra money, drop $400 on it, rock and roll. Those are cold air intakes. Now, what I advise against, before we move forward here, is any type of air intake system that has an open filter sitting here. And I don't care if it's got a heat shield going around it that's supposed to seal against the hood of the car or not. Those are not cold air intakes because they're not hermetically sealed off from the engine bay. I've looked at so many of these. They've got large gaps around them that can suck in hot air. They may have rubber going across the top that's supposed to butt up against the hood of your car. They don't completely seal against the hood of your car. They can't. You know, your engine moves, the air intake moves. It can't completely seal against the hood of your car. You're going to get massive amounts of hot air leaking into your air intake system, and that's what you don't want. You do not want hot air going into your air intake system. That you'll actually lose horsepower. Now, when you open the hood at a car show, it might look great, and you might like that sound, but performance-wise, yeah, stay away from those if you're looking for performance. But if you want something that looks flashy and you want to make a bunch of intake noise, then more power to you. But don't expect to net any substantial amount of horsepower increase from a hot air intake like that. Also, I've seen other people take their air boxes and drill holes in the bottom of the air box. And that's not a smart idea either. Because again, you're just sucking in hot air from the engine bay. Now, if you want to drill a hole in your air box and route a pipe down into the bumper out next to the fog light, so it's drawing in cold air from close to the ground up into the bottom of the air box, then more power to you. That's a ram air scoop. Most race cars run setups like that because the lower you are to the ground, the colder and the denser the air is. So drawing in air from as close to the bottom of the car as possible is definitely better. Now, you don't see manufacturers doing that because you've got other issues to worry about. You've got, you know, what if you drive your car through a big rain puddle and now your intake sucks in a bunch of water? That's why they're always up a bit higher in the grill. And then there's a snow issue too, you know, ingestion of snow and so on. So let's see. All right, so on the inside of the airbox here, let's see what we can get. Excuse me while I move the camera around just a bit. All right, let's talk about this stock airbox here. Now, this is the same on the R32 and the Volkswagen EOS with the VR6. We have this device in our airbox right here. It's mounted like so. It's a flapper valve that opens and closes upon a certain condition. And I don't know what condition specifically it's supposed to be. This is not vacuum controlled. It's not electric controlled. There appears to be a sensor right here that might be a temperature sensor. I could not get this thing to function. It's, as you can see right now, it's open. I applied heat to this, thinking that this would close. This is either defective or heat does not close this. So what this flapper valve does is it, again, also allows hot air in through this area right here into your airbox. Now, this also sections off your airbox. So your air is coming in through here and goes up through the air filter in this direction here. So your airbox is basically, the volume is decreased with this in here. So this isn't needed. European R32s don't have this garbage in them. I have to assume this is for emissions purposes and not for a specific reason to make the motor run correctly, because the European R32s don't have this. So this is something else I removed. And I also used some more of the high temp dryer tape, the aluminum dryer tape, to seal up the hole right there. And I've got a couple layers on the inside and I've got a couple layers on the outside. And this has been on here for 3-4 months, no problems whatsoever. So by removing this piece, we increase the overall volume of the airbox, the amount of air that can flow in and then through the filter, then into the mass airflow sensor, and then into the throttle body. And we've also separated the entire air intake system from the engine bay. So it's not drawing in any hot air from the engine bay. All the air is coming directly through the grill. So those are my suggestions if you have a similar setup to this on what to do to maximize the performance of the stock air intake system. This is the best bang for the buck you're going to get performance-wise for the amount of money that you're going to spend. You can get a bit more performance if you drop money down on an APR or an AFE complete replacement, but you know, you're going to be spending upwards of $400. So anyway, that more or less covers the air intake mods that I've done on the EOS VR6 up to this point. And hopefully this answers a lot of the questions that I know I've been receiving a lot of DMs about these sort of things, and I've been trying to answer everybody. I'm now going to point everybody over to this video so I don't have to explain myself over and over again. Anyway, well, thanks for visiting the Too Fast channel. Thanks for watching this video and listening to me ramble on about air intakes, and I'll catch up with you in the next video.